Human envoys Valor in battle forces, alien guardian, Sira to rethink her loyalty and heart. The tranquil midnight around the Vega outpost's human consulate shattered when a burst of searing blue energy ripped through the panoramic wall, tearing a molten gash across polished granite and hurling shards in every direction. Mason, the consulate's youngest envoy, barely registered the shriek of rending metal before instinct drove him into a desperate dive behind a toppled sculpture. His badge and credentials fluttered into the maelstrom, swirling in the sudden updraft of smoke and ozone. Sirens wailed, casting a strobe of crimson over the lobby's now ruined elegance. The air was thick with the acrid tang of burning polymers, and the shrill pulse of alarm seemed to vibrate in Mason's chest. He pressed his back to the cold stone, heart pounding, breath ragged. Already in motion was Sira, his alien guardian, protector, and, in this moment, avenging fury incarnate. She strode through the chaos, a striking figure etched in living light, her skin a deep glowing crimson, crisscrossed with intricate ritual scars that shimmered with internal luminescence. Two curved obsidian horns swept back from her temples, gleaming as they caught the flicker of emergency lighting. Amber eyes, flecked with starlight, scanned the fractured lobby, calculating every threat with chilling precision. "Stay low, Mason," she commanded, her voice velvet over steel. In 3 swift strides, she reached the emergency cache and punched in her access code. Compartments hissed open, revealing a pair of ion carbines. Sira's hands moved with predatory grace as she armed herself, plates of living metal armor flexing seamlessly over leather straps, her lithe form a study in readiness. Mason dared a glance over the shattered remains of the sculpture. Through the swirling haze, he glimpsed shadows, figures in matte black armor, moving with methodical purpose. Blue targeting lasers danced along the floor. "How many are there?" Mason shouted, ducking as a stray bolt hissed overhead. 50 hostiles, 4 assault pods, heavy equipment," Sira replied, her gaze sweeping the perimeter. There was no fear in her tone, only cold assessment. Mason's mind raced. He crawled toward a shattered terminal, sparks raining down from exposed conduits. He jabbed the emergency beacon switch, but only static spat back at him. The comms were dead. Jammed. He looked at Sira, forcing calm into his voice. "They're not here to negotiate. If we run, we're finished." Sira's fingers tightened on the carbines, and for a heartbeat, her expression flickered. Protective, almost pleading. Her instincts screamed to get him to the escape lift, to spirit him away from the killing floor above. But Mason met her eyes, steady and unflinching. "They'll shoot us down before we clear the roof," he said, low and certain. "We hold here. Make them pay for every step." A figure stumbled through the haze, Jenna, the tech officer, one hand pressed to her bloodied brow, the other clutching a portable comms unit. "I got a fragment of a distress call out, but the jammers—" Her words cut off as another detonation rocked the west wing, showering them in dust. Jenna's eyes darted to the smoke-filled corridors. "I can try the backup relay in the sub-basement, but the structure's failing." "Do it," Mason snapped. His gaze flickered across the consulate's layout, every choke point, every blind corner, every asset. Sira watched him, surprise flickering in her eyes as she saw him not as a bureaucrat, but as something harder, sharper. He radiated command. "Jenna, reroute power from the archives to the defense grid, prioritize perimeter shields and automated sentries." His tone was crisp, decisive. On it. Jenna vanished into the gloom, already keying in override codes on her datapad. Mason turned to Sira. "You take the north and east corridors, hold the bottlenecks, keep them boxed in." Sira nodded, understanding and admiration mingling in her golden gaze. "Everyone else, seal the maintenance shafts and barricade the secondary entrances. Anything that slows them down." Mason's voice carried, slicing through the panic. Staff members, faces pale and drawn, snapped into motion. He swept the room with a glance, picking out Rex, the engineering chief, a burly man already dragging heavy tables across the floor. Rex, get your team. Use those mining tools as weapons. Anything that makes noise or sparks, trap the corridors with it. Rex grinned, the glint of battle lighting his eyes. Let's give them hell, boss. Mason pressed on, directing Dr. Lyra and the medbay staff. I want chemical deterrents, smoke, acid, anything that'll blind or slow them. Dr. Lyra, trembling but resolute, nodded. We'll rig something up. Staff who moments before cowered in terror now surged into action, barricading doors with overturned benches, stacking art glass into makeshift explosives, and pulling fiber optic cables to weave tripwires across the marble expanse. The opulent lobby transformed, piece by piece, into a fortress. Sira moved with lethal purpose, setting auto-sentries and rigging ion mines at choke points. Her movements were poetry in motion, silent, efficient, deadly. Yet every few seconds her gaze flicked back to Mason, measuring the depth of his resolve. He caught her looking. Sira, don't shield me. Fight at my side, he said, voice softer now, intimate, the words vibrating with something unspoken. A thrill ran through her, an electric charge that went beyond duty. In this crucible, protector and charge had become equals. The building trembled as the enemy breached the outer barricades. The first invader crashed through, a silhouette framed in burning blue. The traps triggered, a chain of detonations that filled the air with shrieking shrapnel and wild arcs of energy. Mason signaled Rex. Kill the lights! Darkness swallowed the consulate, broken only by the flicker of muzzle flashes and the spectral blue of enemy energy weapons. In the sudden gloom, Sira and Mason moved as one, her alien agility a blur beside his precise tactical direction. Each step, each shot, was measured, a dance of survival and defiance. The siege had begun. Waves of attackers adapted with alarming speed. The first mercenaries who fell to the lobby's improvised traps had barely hit the marble before their comrades altered their approach, advancing in tight squads, shields raised, scanning for threats. Their helmets flickered with tactical overlays as they rolled in stun grenades and swept the shadows with coordinated fire. Jenna crouched in the shattered comms alcove, fingers racing over her tablet. Static bled from her headset, but she pressed on, splicing into the enemy's frequencies. Suddenly, a burst of clear audio cut through the noise, clipped, efficient voices barking orders in an unfamiliar dialect. Mason, she called, glancing up as another blast rattled the walls. These aren't rebels, they're mercenaries, contracted by a mining syndicate. Their orders are to silence all witnesses. No survivors. Mason's eyes narrowed, taking in the new reality. The violence was no longer personal, nor political. It was business, calculated and cold. He tore the remains of his jacket, using it to bind a wound on his arm, the old scars across his torso catching Sira's gaze for the first time. Faded burns, jagged lines, ancient bruises, testaments to other battles, other nights that reeked of blood and ozone. He pressed his palm to the wall, tracing the building's power grid in his mind. Jenna, route the ventilation to Corridor 3 and release the medbay's chemical stockpiles. Rex, prep seismic charges for the loading docks. I want overlapping kill zones. Rex, sweating and soot-streaked, gave a grim thumbs up. On it, boss. The defense became a symphony of ruthlessness. Clouds of stinging anesthetic rolled down one hallway, sending mercenaries staggering and coughing. In another, Mason detonated seismic charges at just the right moment, collapsing a marble archway and pinning an entire squad beneath a rain of rubble. He moved with the ease of someone who had been here before, ducking low under energy fire, gesturing with a bloodied hand for Sira to flank right. Sira could not look away from those scars. There was a confidence in Mason, a dark, quiet certainty she had never seen in the polished consular suites. For a moment she wondered what secrets he carried, what pain had shaped that steady calm. Then the enemy captain arrived. He was massive, half his face a gleaming lattice of steel, his voice mechanically amplified. Garrick. Each step shook the ground, cybernetic limbs bristling with weaponry. He fixed on Mason amid the chaos, eyes blazing with predatory focus. "That's him!" Garrick snarled, voice echoing through the comms. "The Envoy." Alive. Sira's protective urge blazed to life. She surged forward, every instinct screaming to intercept, to shield Mason with her own body. But Mason's hand flashed up, a silent command. "Trust me," he said, voice calm even as Garrick advanced, clearing the floor with every stride. Garrick barreled toward him, scattering furniture, shoving aside his own men. Mason sidestepped, drawing the brute past a tripwire. The explosion barely fazed Garrick. He plowed through smoke and falling glass, swinging a massive cybernetic arm. Mason ducked under the blow, rolling across the floor. "Why are you here, Garrick?" he taunted, breathless, weaving between shattered pillars. "Mercenaries don't work for free." Garrick sneered, lips peeling back from chromed teeth. "You talk too much. Syndicate says you die." "Does the Syndicate pay you for overtime?" Mason feinted left, watching Garrick's weight shift. "Or do they just promise to wipe out your debts?" Garrick's fist crashed through a marble plinth. Mason used the moment, twisting behind him, voice low and sharp. "You don't want to die for them, Garrick. You know they'll erase you next." For a heartbeat, Garrick hesitated. Mason seized it, slamming a shock baton against a vulnerable joint. Sparks sprayed. Garrick roared, swinging wildly, but Mason was already gone, sliding beneath a fallen beam. The melee was brutal, raw, close, desperate. Sira watched, torn between admiration and terror, her grip tight on the ion carbine. Mason ducked, feinted, spoke, using words as weapons, sowing doubt even as he fought. Finally, Garrick faltered. "They lied to you," Mason hissed, voice urgent. "They'll erase every witness, every contract. You're disposable." Garrick's glare wavered, uncertainty flickering. Mason delivered a final stunning blow to Garrick's temple, and the brute crashed to the ground, unconscious. Jenna's voice crackled in Mason's earpiece. "I've cracked their encryption. Syndicate Command is ordering a purge. Erase all evidence. Burn the site. They're sending in demolitions." The revelation sent a fresh wave of fear through the defenders. Sira's jaw clenched. "They mean to destroy everything. Us, the staff, the consulate itself." "Then we don't give them time," Mason replied. He glanced at Sira, the set of his shoulders daring her to challenge him. "We make them fight for every centimeter." The next assault hit like a storm. Mercenaries poured in from the upper floors, blasting through barricades with plasma cutters. The defense grid faltered. Sentry guns fell silent as their power cells drained. Sira and Mason fought side by side, anticipating each other's moves with uncanny precision. He would call a warning, and she would pivot, catching a flanking squad in a withering crossfire. She would gesture, now, there, and he would lob an improvised explosive, scattering their attackers. Their bond deepened in the violence. Two warriors, utterly in sync, breathing the same ragged air, moving as one. Sira found herself trusting him, not just as her charge, but as a partner, an equal. He was everywhere at once, patching wounds, directing staff, fighting with brutal efficiency. As ammunition dwindled and the barricades splintered, the defenders fell back to the central foyer. Sira ducked behind an overturned bench, reloading with trembling hands. Mason dropped beside her, face streaked with soot, eyes alight with adrenaline. Their hands met over the ammo pack. Just for a moment, fingers lingering. Neither spoke. The touch said enough. In that heartbeat of silence, something flared between them. A spark. Undeniable. Electric. The roof buckled as another explosion rocked the building. "We have to move," Rex called, appearing through a haze of smoke, wielding a mining laser like a war axe. "Maintenance tunnels, now, before they bring the whole place down." Mason nodded, signaling the remaining staff to fall back. Sira led the way, guiding them through the maze of narrow passages beneath the consulate. Alarms shrieked overhead. The roar of fire followed them down, shadows flickering along the walls. They emerged at the far end, the consulate ablaze behind them, a burning silhouette against the night sky. Ash drifted through the air, settling in Mason's hair, glinting in Sira's scars. Rex pointed ahead. "The main refinery is just beyond the storage yards. We can hole up there. Those mercs won't risk a full assault inside. Too many things that can go wrong." Mason's eyes sharpened, already forming a plan. "We'll use that. Jenna, Rex, prep the mining systems for remote operation. If they follow, we turn the whole facility into a weapon." Rex grinned, teeth flashing. "Booby-trap the ore chutes, rig the conveyors, make them regret every step." "Exactly," Mason said, his voice grim with resolve. "Jenna, set up a wireless relay. We'll draw them in and then cut them off." In the darkness outside the refinery, the group paused, breathless, battered, united by survival. Sira wiped grime from Mason's brow, her touch gentle. He caught her hand, holding it tight. "When I move, follow close," he whispered, voice low, fierce. "And Sira, stop treating me like I'm fragile." Before she could reply, he drew her in, kissing her, quick, fierce, full of promise. In that instant, the boundaries between them dissolved, and nothing else mattered but the fire burning between their joined hands and the wild hope sparking in their hearts. They emerged into the refinery's core, boots crunching on a lattice of metal grates slick with dust and oil. The cavernous space echoed with the clatter of conveyor belts and the slow, grinding pulse of ancient machinery. Light flickered from battered overhead strips, glinting off piles of raw ore and rows of looming industrial arms. Sira paused, eyes narrowing as her senses swept the shadows. A squad of mercenaries waited for them, armored figures fanned out across the main assembly floor, weapons drawn, their stances tense and expectant. The leader stepped forward, visor reflecting the orange gleam of molten metal from a smelting pit. The air hummed with the threat of violence. Mason's fingers brushed Sira's as he scanned the room, his mind working at a fever pitch. Rex edged along a railing above, waiting for the signal. The tension was a living thing. Sira felt it coil through her, sharp and hot, as she slid into position beside Mason. "Ready?" Mason murmured, barely moving his lips. "Always," Sira replied, her voice a low current beneath the clangor. Rex gave the faintest nod from his perch. With a quick gesture, Mason launched the trap. Jenna's voice crackled in his ear. "Systems primed, do it now." Mason slammed a fist onto the control panel. Instantly, conveyor belts lurched to life, hurling chunks of jagged ore through the air like shrapnel. The mercenaries reeled, shields coming up too late as stone and metal battered them. Sira leaped into motion, vaulting onto a moving belt and kicking a rifle from one attacker's hands. Rex, up above, triggered a sequence of commands. Industrial arms swung from their mounts, pistons hissing as they became battering rams, slamming mercenaries off their feet and pinning them beneath steel claws. The room erupted into chaos. Mason darted between cascading ore and flailing machinery, his movements perfectly matched to Sira's alien grace. She rolled beneath a swinging loader arm, sweeping a mercenary's legs from under him, then spun and met Mason's eyes, synchronizing in silent understanding. He tossed her a power cell. She caught it and slammed it into her carbine, sending a volley of stun bolts across the line. "Push them back," Mason called, his voice raw with command. Sira grinned, a wild flash of teeth and starlit eyes. "With pleasure." They moved in perfect tandem, weaving through the industrial maze, he anticipating her angles, she covering his blind spots. Where Mason faltered, Sira surged forward. Where Sira hesitated, Mason was already there, backing her with a precision that sent the mercenaries scattering. Rex whooped from the catwalk, swinging down on a cable to join the fray, mining laser blazing. Above it all, Jenna perched in the refinery's dusty control booth, fingers flying over cracked keys. "Central comms restored," she announced, voice trembling with excitement. "I'm broadcasting, stand by." The refinery's old speakers crackled, then boomed to life. A sharp digital chord rang out, followed by the clipped, unmistakable voice of the syndicate's own director, caught on a recorded line. "No survivors. Erase all witnesses. The resource contract is ours, whatever the cost." Jenna amplified the feed, pushing it not just to the outpost's channels but across every planetary relay, news networks, private comms, even the emergency bands. The conspiracy, laid bare for all to hear. In the sudden confusion, the mercenaries faltered. Some froze, staring at their comms in disbelief. Others tried to retreat, only to be battered by swinging loader arms or trapped beneath conveyor chutes jammed with tumbling ore. Mason seized the moment. "The whole planet's listening, gentlemen. Lay down your weapons, and maybe someone will listen to your side of the story in court." The leader hesitated, then, seeing no way out, dropped his weapon with a clatter. One by one, the others followed. The fight was not entirely over. Skirmishes flared along the catwalks, but the tide had shifted. Outside, rescue craft cut through the smoke-choked sky, searchlights arcing over the burning consulate and battered refinery. Sirens wailed in the distance, a promise of help at last. Yet inside, the adrenaline still surged. Mason and Sira, pressed together in a shadowed alcove behind a tangle of piping, found themselves suddenly, exquisitely alone. Sira's breathing was uneven, her armor streaked with dust and blood, one horn nicked, but her gaze unwavering. Mason touched her shoulder, voice raw. "When this ends, everything changes." She looked away, something aching in her eyes. "My duty is to return to my fleet. They'll need me." The words came out barely above a whisper, but each syllable cut deep. Mason's gaze was steady, voice gentle but urgent. "Does it have to?" "Sira, there's more than duty. There's what we want." She opened her mouth to reply, but footsteps echoed down the hall. Rex burst in, beaming, arms spread wide. "They're calling for us upstairs. Celebration's brewing. Everyone wants to see their heroes." Mason's eyes never left Sira's. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, promise and longing suspended between what was and what might be. After the surrender, the refinery filled with the battered but elated staff. Medics attended the wounded, engineers checked the machinery, and everywhere there were handshakes, laughter, and grateful tears. Yet, for Mason and Sira, every glance carried a secret weight, every accidental brush of hands charged with something new and volatile. The debrief was a blur. Officials grilling Mason about tactics, syndicate motives, Sira's combat logs. Jenna sat nearby, grinning over her hacked broadcast as the planetary governor commended her. Rex regaled everyone with tales of swinging from cables and fighting with mining lasers. But across the table, Mason and Sira's eyes kept meeting. Silent messages passing between them, unsaid and undeniable. Later, in the hush of the security office, the celebrations muffled by thick walls, Mason pored over footage from the refinery's cameras, cataloging evidence. Sira slipped in, moving with her usual quiet grace. She joined him at the console, their arms brushing as they watched the final moments of the siege. The air between them was electric, heavy with everything left unsaid. Sira's voice was soft, uncertain. We should keep our distance. This, what we are. It's dangerous. Mason didn't answer with words. Instead, he turned, caught her chin in his hand, and kissed her. Hungry, reckless, determined. The world narrowed to the heat of her lips, the thunder of his heart, the promise in her touch. He broke away just long enough to whisper, "Some risks are worth it." Sira smiled, a slow, fierce curve of her mouth, her eyes bright with wild hope. She pulled him close, and together they sealed their new reality, leaving the shadows of duty and fear behind. With the authorities arriving and the syndicate routed, Mason and Sira moved through the battered refinery, the clamor of rescue operations and the shouts of survivors echoing behind them. Shuttles landed in the scorched yard, disgorging uniformed officers and medical teams. The planetary governor's insignia gleamed beneath the searchlights, but it was Mason and Sira's calm presence at the heart of the chaos that drew every eye. Inside, Jenna coordinated data uploads, her fingers dancing over a half-melted console. Dr. Lyra oversaw triage, her voice steady as she directed the wounded to stretchers. Rex, triumphant and limping, organized barricades, determined to keep the refinery secure while the last pockets of resistance were swept up. Yet the real story unfolded in the quiet of the command center. Here, amid flickering displays and the soft whir of backup generators, Sira sat hunched over a cluster of captured datapads, their cracked screens spilling streams of encrypted syndicate transmissions. Mason watched her from across the table, his jacket still torn, eyes shadowed by exhaustion and something deeper. Sira's expression was tight with concentration. "They missed it," she murmured, voice low. "The mercenaries. They thought you were harmless. All their briefings say the same. Envoy, non-combatant, low threat." She looked up, amber eyes catching his in the half-light. Mason's smile was enigmatic, a ghost of amusement curling his lips. "That's my favorite weapon." He leaned forward, voice softer now. "They look at the suit and the words and see weakness. They never see the rest." She studied him, not for the first time feeling the gulf between the man she'd been assigned to protect and the one who now sat across from her, wounded, unbowed, every scar earned in silence. In the outer corridor, Jenna poked her head in, grinning. "You two make quite the pair. The new planetary legends. Want me to field the next round of media requests? Maybe set up a fan club?" Her eyes sparkled with mischief as Sira rolled hers in exasperation. "Handle the comms, Jenna," Mason replied, but there was warmth beneath the command. They returned to their work, overseeing the psychological collapse of the last captured mercenaries. Some stared blankly at the floor, others raged against their bindings. Mason's voice was calm, relentless, as he recorded his final broadcast, a message destined for every corner of the system. "This is Mason Thorne, Human Consulate. The refinery is under our control. Syndicate forces, you have one chance. Surrender, and you will live. Resist, and this complex will become your tomb. You have 60 seconds. He set the timer, eyes unwavering as the clock ticked down. Sira listened, heart pounding, the words burning through her. This was not the man she'd first guarded. The careful diplomat. The peace weaver. This was someone forged in fire, a leader who wielded mercy and ruthlessness in equal measure. The mercenaries began to break, tossing weapons aside, voices rising in panicked calls for surrender. Jenna grinned from the comms panel. "You just made planetary history. Again." But the moment of triumph was brief. An alarm blared, one sharp rising note that meant only one thing. Jenna's face paled as she scanned the feeds. Last strike force inbound. Heavy armor, full assault. They're going to take the refinery or die trying. Mason's jaw tightened. Rex, seal every access point. Dr. Lyra, move the wounded below. Sira. He met her eyes, the unspoken bond between them flaring. You're with me. Within minutes, the calm command center became a war room. Mason and Sira orchestrated the defense, transforming the refinery into a fortress. Conveyor belts were programmed to reverse at blinding speed, flinging slag and debris at choke points. Smelters hissed, their heat redirected to create lethal kill zones. Ore hoppers rigged with explosives hung ready above the main thoroughfares. Ready, Sira? Mason asked, standing beside her at the primary barricade. She flexed her hands on her carbine, scars glowing in the half-light. Let them come. The assault was overwhelming. The Syndicate's final strike force crashed into the refinery, weapons blazing. Waves of mercenaries surged through the outer gates, only to be battered by automated arms and falling ore. Mason and Sira moved as one, communicating in glances and clipped words, their partnership now an instinct. Left flank, now! Mason called, and Sira was already there, dropping 3 attackers with precise shots. He ducked beneath a swinging loader, dragging a wounded staffer to safety. Rex, collapse the catwalk. Rex, sweat streaking his brow, slammed the release. Steel girders crashed down, scattering the enemy and blocking the advance. Still, the numbers pressed in. Walkways buckled, barricades splintered. Fire licked at the walls and alarms howled. Sira caught Mason's gaze, saw the calculation there. He jerked his head toward the central core, where the heart of the refinery pulsed with raw energy. We can't hold them forever, he said, voice low. I have a last gambit. Overload the core, take out the entire complex. Her eyes widened, but she nodded once. Absolute trust. If we're still here when it goes, Mason said, we're done. They fought their way back, step by brutal step. Explosions rattled the floors. Sira covered Mason as he punched in the overload sequence, alarms wailing louder now. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes, flames licking the catwalks. 30 seconds! Mason shouted over the chaos. They ran. The refinery became a labyrinth of smoke and fire, every corridor collapsing behind them. Blasts tore through the machinery, molten metal spattering the walkways. Sira stumbled, Mason catching her arm, hauling her forward without pause. Almost there, he called, not letting go. They dove through a maintenance hatch as the core's scream rose to a fever pitch. Behind them, the world seemed to collapse in on itself. A shockwave thundered outward as the refinery erupted, fire painting the alien sky in a pillar of gold and scarlet. They tumbled down a stony embankment, coming to rest beneath a shattered archway of mineral glass. For a long moment, neither spoke. Sira pressed close, trembling with exertion, Mason's arms tight around her as debris rained down in the distance. He pulled her closer, shielding her as the last echoes of destruction faded into the night. Above them, the sky blazed with fire and the promise of dawn. Their kiss, in that breathless aftermath, was no longer about adrenaline or the desperate joy of survival. It was softer, deeper, born of hope, of a future they might claim together, beneath these stars that now belonged to them both. The aftermath was both victorious and uncertain. Dawn crept over the ravaged plains, painting the sky in bruised gold and pale violet. The refinery's ruins still smoldered behind a cordon of rescue vehicles and security drones. Mason and Sira sat together beneath the alien stars, dust clinging to their uniforms, the glow of the fires reflected in their eyes. They were no longer fugitives or targets. Now they were legends, their names whispered through the ranks of miners and officials alike. There was nothing left to hide. As the first dropships landed, planetary authorities surged into the chaos, armored, precise, and hungry for answers. The conspiracy was unmasked in a cascade of evidence. Syndicate files decoded, mercenary confessions broadcast, and the smoldering remains of the refinery as proof of resistance. Mason and Sira watched as officials took statements, the truth spreading across the settlement like wildfire. In the heart of the temporary encampment, a celebration erupted. Raw, surreal, and bright with relief. Medics patched wounds while miners raised battered mugs to Mason, their cheers ragged but genuine. Officials and dignitaries clustered near the central pavilion, lauding the tactics that had saved the outpost and toppled the syndicate's scheme. Medals gleamed in the morning light, pinned to uniforms that still bore scorch marks and blood. Jenna, her hair wild from sleepless nights, clapped Mason on the back as a governor draped a ceremonial sash across his chest. "Senior Envoy," she teased, grinning. "You going to make us call you sir now?" "Only if you want to see my worst diplomatic scowl," Mason shot back, his smile wide but his eyes always searching for Sira. Rex, one arm in a sling, clanked mugs with Dr. Lyra as they watched Sira cross the crowded yard. Her crimson skin caught the sunrise, ritual scars glowing faintly beneath the fresh insignia pinned at her collar. An official from the Planetary Council addressed her, voice formal, posture deferential. "We'd be honored to have you remain as permanent liaison, Sira. Your leadership saved us all." Sira inclined her head, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. Applause rippled through the crowd. Jenna caught her eye and winked. "Looks like you're stuck with us." The celebration swelled, surreal and joyous. For all the speeches and honors, the true victory lived in the quiet spaces, in the hush that fell as Mason and Sira slipped away from the lights and noise, tracing the outer edge of the settlement where the night still lingered. Their hands brushed, fingers tangling, the unspoken promise of the past days humming between them. Sira broke the silence, her voice soft and uncertain. "My orders are to return home. The fleet will expect my report. My loyalty." Mason's gaze was steady, the tension in his jaw easing only as he reached for her hand. "Orders can change, if you want them to." His words were gentle, but there was iron beneath them, a faith in her, in them. She studied his face, searching for doubt and finding none. "You'd risk everything. For us?" There was a tremor in her voice, the faintest shadow of fear. He squeezed her hand, his answer simple, honest. "For what we could become." The decision was hers. She had always known it. But the way she leaned into his touch, the way her breath caught, spoke volumes. In that moment, the uncertainty faded, replaced by a dawning certainty that filled her with a fragile hope. The settlement pulsed with celebration behind them, music rising, voices lifted in laughter and gratitude. Yet here, on the edge of all that noise, they found their peace. Mason brushed a stray lock of hair from Sira's brow, his thumb lingering on the curve of her horn. Sira's voice was barely more than a whisper. "I never imagined this would be possible." He smiled, leaning close. "Neither did I. But you made it real." They stood together, watching the sun rise over a world remade by their choices. 3 months later, at the authorities' sprawling headquarters in the heart of the capital, the story had shifted from battle to legend. The diplomatic gala was a blaze of light and color, banners unfurled along the marble walls, music and laughter drifting through the corridors. Mason, clad in formal regalia, moved through the crowd with the effortless grace of a man who had been shaped by fire. Around him, dignitaries and envoys whispered, always glancing toward the crimson figure at his side. Sira wore her new status with quiet pride. Her ceremonial armor gleamed, the insignia of Chief of Security etched in gold beside her ritual scars. The weight of responsibility did not bow her. It elevated her, every movement measured and purposeful. She accepted congratulations with a nod, eyes always flickering to where Mason stood, her anchor in a sea of strangers. Jenna, draped in a sleek dress uniform, intercepted them near the grand staircase. "You two are the talk of the sector. I heard the Tarson delegation wants to model their entire security protocol on your partnership." Her grin was wicked. "Of course, they'll have to start with the romance training." Rex, still sporting a limp but now with a medal of his own, raised his glass. "To the only team that could outmaneuver a syndicate, outfight mercenaries, and outsmart the whole authority, all while falling head over heels. That's something to toast." Mason accepted the praise with a wry smile, but his attention never strayed far from Sira. She caught him watching her, warmth blooming in her chest at the way his eyes softened just for her. They moved through the throng as one, greeting admirers, fielding questions, but always returning to each other, a magnetic pull that none could break. The formalities blurred, speeches about unity and courage, a new code of conduct for security liaisons, awards, and endless rounds of applause. Yet beneath the pomp, Mason and Sira's partnership was what truly captivated the room. Officials spoke in hushed tones of their seamless teamwork, their mutual trust, and the undeniable spark that made even the most jaded diplomat pause. As the last anthem faded and the dignitaries drifted away, Mason slipped his hand into Sira's. "Ready to disappear?" he murmured, a mischievous glint in his eyes. She smiled, a genuine, unguarded thing, and squeezed his fingers. "Lead the way, Senior Envoy." They slipped from the hall, laughter echoing behind them, their medals flashing in the moonlight. Outside, the city was quiet, the world finally theirs. Together, they walked beneath the alien sky, savoring their hard-won freedom and each other, no longer just partners in duty, but in hope, in life, in love. Their new life was a blend of challenge and promise. Each day brought unexpected obstacles, political fires to douse, disputes to settle, dangers that sometimes echoed with the threat and chaos of the siege they had survived. But woven through every duty, every crisis, was the quiet certainty of belonging. Sira's appointment as liaison had changed more than her title. It had transformed the rhythm of their lives. She was no longer only Mason's guardian or the station's silent protector. She was his partner in every sense, standing beside him in the field and holding him close in the moments between. The story of their union had already become legend across the outpost and beyond. Staff spoke of the way Sira's hand would linger on Mason's shoulder during briefings, or how his voice softened when speaking to her alone. Their intimacy was no longer a secret, nor a source of whispered speculation. It was a testament to the battles they had fought and the trust they had earned. Even the miners, once skeptical of off-worlders and their strange customs, toasted the pair with genuine warmth in the settlement's makeshift cantina. Sometimes, in the quiet hours, Mason would find Sira at the edge of the landing pads, watching the stars drift above the horizon. He'd join her there, arms around her waist, breathing in the scent of ozone and cold metal. "You ever wonder if we'd have found each other if not for all the chaos?" he asked one night, voice soft against the hum of distant engines. Sira's answer was a small smile, her amber eyes luminous in the half-light. "We were meant to. In every world, under every sky, I'd find you." She leaned into his touch, the warmth between them banishing the memory of cold nights and lonely sentry posts. In the command center, their partnership was seamless. Mason drafting policy, Sira overseeing security, their decisions synchronized by unspoken understanding. Even the most jaded officials had come to rely on their combined instincts, their reputations now interwoven. Sira's presence at diplomatic functions was no longer questioned, but expected. Her ritual scars, once a curiosity, had become symbols of resilience and unity. The galaxy, however, never slept. Word came of trouble brewing in the Epsilon system, a resource blockade, rumors of piracy, whispers of a conspiracy that reminded Mason a little too much of what they'd just survived. The assignment was urgent, the authorities' trust in them, absolute. On the morning of their departure, the settlement buzzed with anticipation. Crew hustled about the docking bay, loading supplies into the sleek survey vessel that would carry Mason and Sira across the stars. Officials arrived to see them off, exchanging last-minute data slates and well wishes. Jenna, now Chief Comms Officer, grinned as she handed Mason a sealed envelope. "Don't open until Epsilon," she teased, "and don't break anything important this time." Rex, arm finally out of its sling, clapped Sira on the back. "Keep him in line," he said with a wink. "You're the only one who can." Dr. Lyra pressed a medkit into Sira's hands, her eyes shining with pride. "You saved all of us. If anyone can untangle Epsilon, it's you two." Amid the bustle, Mason and Sira found a moment of quiet at the edge of the launch ramp, their ship gleaming in the pale morning light. They walked hand in hand, the connection between them as natural as breath. Every glance, every brush of fingers, spoke of the journey they had shared and the promise of what was still to come. Sira paused, drawing Mason to a stop beneath the shadow of the vessel's wing. She studied his face, her own features softened by affection and something like awe. "Are you ready for whatever comes?" she asked, her voice gentle but edged with the anticipation of the unknown. Her eyes, deep and luminous, seemed to reflect distant constellations, 1,000 stories waiting to unfold. Mason squeezed her hand, drawing her close. His reply was steady, sincere. "With you, I'm ready for anything." He pressed his forehead to hers, the world falling away, and kissed her. It was a kiss that spoke of all they had endured, all the moments of terror and hope, of loss and victory, of finding each other when the odds seemed impossible. In that instant, time held its breath for them alone. A gentle chime echoed across the bay, the signal for final boarding. Sira drew back, her lips curved in a smile that was both fierce and tender. "Let's see what fate has for us next, Senior Envoy." Mason grinned, his eyes alight with the thrill of adventure and the comfort of certainty. "Side by side, liaison, no matter what." They climbed the gangway together, boots ringing on metal, hearts steady. The vessel's engines powered up, a low thrum building as the crew completed their checks. Through the viewport, the world they had saved spread out beneath them. Familiar, changed, full of people who now looked to them as symbols of what was possible. The countdown began. Mason took his seat at the console, Sira beside him, her hand finding his once more. As the ship lifted off, weightlessness pressed them together, and for a heartbeat, all boundaries, Envoy and Guardian, human and alien, past and future, ceased to matter. They soared into the darkness, bound for the Epsilon system, for challenge and danger and the unknown. Yet there was no hesitation, no fear. Together, they were more than Envoy and Guardian, more than human and alien. They were partners, equals, and finally, lovers. Whatever the cosmos held, piracy, politics, or promise, they would face it side by side, their bond unbreakable, their future unwritten, and theirs to shape. The stars beckoned. Mason and Sira answered, together. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.